Why hello there. I have been putting off filming this video for a really long time now. Ugh, I feel like I put so much pressure on myself to make sure that this video is perfect and that I say all the right things and that I look the best I have ever looked. And I kind of look like a news anchor currently. I'm just gonna sit down today and I'm just gonna chat to you like I have with all of my friends about this very subject, because at the end of the day I think that that's the format that would be most helpful. That's best for me to express myself, that's best for me to get all of my thoughts out. I know I don't owe anyone a justification. That's not what this video is. I am mainly making this video to document my feelings for myself, as well as to help anyone out there who may be going through a similar life transition as I am, or maybe is feeling really uninspired or really unhappy in their careers, in their lives. Hopefully just to share my story, not necessarily as a advice video or a how-to guide, but just as a means of comfort for anybody who needs it right now. Or if you're just curious, if you just came here for the tea, more power to you. Welcome to the channel. If you don't know who I am, my name is Michelle. I run this channel with my sister Aline. We typically are two gals living and working in New York City, but have been in Montana since the pandemic kind of unfolded in March, but we will be going back to New York very soon, so we're very excited about that. We're sisters, roommates, best friends, and overall I think pretty fun gals, so welcome to the party. So basically, if you couldn't tell already by the title of this video, by the thumbnail, by the multiple Instagram posts that I've created in the last couple weeks, week and a half, something like that, I quit my 9-to-5 job to work for myself. I think the best place to start off is by stating that by no means am I quitting my full-time job to become a full-time YouTuber. I think it's amazing that so many creators are able to do that. But if you don't really know how YouTube works and how much influencers are paid, you might not know this, but on this channel we absolutely don't make enough money off of to live. Even just one person, let alone two people, because Aline and I split all our earnings. So I'm not currently in the financial position to pursue YouTube full-time, so that's not what this video is going to be about, but there are plenty of videos on the internet that other creators have put out there that are amazing about leaving their full-time jobs to be a YouTuber, a full-time influencer, a full-time digital creator, whatever you want to call that career path. I guess the best time to start is January 2019, when the idea of freelancing, of contract work, of working for myself, of starting my own business kind of came about. So essentially, if you are new here or newer here, I used to work at a startup for an accessories brand and I was their social media manager. I loved working there. I loved the people that I worked with, and overall I was pretty content. Of course, some days were good, some days were bad, like in any job, but I was pretty content with my career and didn't really think about freelancing or working for myself until January of 2019, when unfortunately it was brought up to myself and my other coworkers that there was no longer the budget to keep us full-time. So I started working part-time for that company, and I started really considering working on a freelance basis and taking on other clients. And it really was this light bulb moment, because I was offered this really unique opportunity of having this stability while also the hours in the day to take on other clients. So this was definitely something that was right up my alley. I was really seriously considering. I was journaling about it all the time. I was having the exact same feelings as I've had recently, now in 2020. So it's just been a pattern throughout the last couple of years, and that's really validating for me to remember, because sometimes I can convince myself that I'm just being impulsive, that I'm just a quitter, that I didn't work hard enough, but it's really helpful for me to look back at these patterns throughout my career where I've had similar feelings and thoughts and felt called to a specific career path and work style. So I was really seriously considering working freelance and taking clients on, but at the time I had just moved to New York. I didn't really have that large of a network. I didn't really have that much experience. Timing wise, looking back, I don't think it was the right time, obviously, because things worked out how they did. But basically, I came to the conclusion that I didn't want to work freelance because I had moved to New York to work in an office, to meet new people, to commute every day. I convinced myself that I was supposed to be living this girl boss lifestyle. I was supposed to have an office job, that I would feel too isolated working from home all the time, which, joke's on me. Welcome to 2020 when everyone is working from home. So basically come February, I decided that no, I didn't want to work freelance. I wanted to search for another full-time job. And I expressed this to my previous employers, and they were really looking for someone who was able to do the part-time position long-term. So they actually let me go, which was really unfortunate. And I was suddenly in a position where I didn't have a job. Very frantically was looking for something else that was full-time. If you've been subscribed to this channel for a while, you would have been, I guess it's not even that long ago. I'm talking about this like it was years ago. I guess like it's almost 2 years ago, which makes me feel a little bit better, but this wasn't that long ago. This was beginning of 2019 and it's end of 2020 now. So it wasn't that long ago, but if you were subscribed to this channel, you would have come along with me on this job hunting journey, which was so strenuous. Searching for a job in New York City when you're right out of college is so hard. I was searching for a job in New York for like 4 months, 5 months. But looking back, I wish I wouldn't have been so one-track minded. I wish I would have been more open to working freelance, because I think that's a great way to start. It's an amazing way to start your portfolio off, to gain experience, to try out different hats and see what you like, what you don't like. But I think at that time, since I was younger and had just moved to New York, I was very one-track minded. I needed to get a full-time job in social media marketing in New York City, and that's what I got eventually. I ended up getting hired at my now previous job and was a social media associate for them. It was everything I was looking for and more. I was so happy and had so many amazing opportunities. I got to travel to Italy, which was absolutely phenomenal. I was able to gain a lot of responsibility, really build out my portfolio, and had some really amazing coworkers that ended up being really good friends. And overall, on paper, this was my dream job. Before getting into the rest of this video, I'm just popping in here really quickly to thank the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. You all already know by now that Aline and I are huge fans of Skillshare classes for expanding our skill set. If you haven't heard of Skillshare before, it's an online learning community with thousands of classes for creative and curious people like yourself on topics ranging from illustration to design, photography, video editing, and even freelancing, which is very fitting for today's video. I've recently started taking Emma Gannon's class on Skillshare, who I absolutely adore, called Discovering Success: 7 Exercises to Uncover Your Purpose, Passion, and Path. And it's just helped me feel so seen and understood throughout this really transitional time in my career and in my creativity, and given me real concrete tools at the same time to help me launch my new business and really flourish in this new chapter and feel more confident. If you've been interested in trying Skillshare for yourself, the first 1,000 to click the link in our description box will get a free trial of Skillshare's premium membership. So make sure to check it out if you're interested in exploring all of the incredible classes Skillshare has to offer. There's seriously something for everybody, and 10 out of 10 would recommend. So let's get back into the video. Fast forward to later in 2019. I think around fall to Christmas time, like around this same time last year, I started becoming very, very unhappy and really mentally ill. If you look back on those vlogs, like every vlog, I'm talking about how I'm going through a hard time and I'm going through a really bad mental health stretch and how I just have to get through this week. I think the pressure of a corporate 9-to-5 life was crushing me, as well as the fact that this company was growing so fast and I was the only social media person. I was taking on tasks that could have been spread throughout an entire social digital team, which we didn't have, but other responsibilities as well, while also receiving criticism that I was falling short in a lot of areas, which was killing me because I felt like I was working overtime and I was spread so thin that I was continuously getting burnt out and felt like I really didn't have that much else to give. But of course, I took these critiques really seriously and really worked hard to improve and continue to push through and do better. And I would get to these stretches where I was really motivated to do better and be better, but then I would burn out and then I would fall again into a pit of despair and really bad anxiety, and I would cry myself to sleep at night. I would cry on my way home on the train. I was tired all the time. I never went out. I barely got together with friends after a certain point. I was always just pinned to my couch or in my bed, like trying to recover from my own life, which at the end of the day, that shouldn't be the way your life is, especially if you're not happy. I don't know, I wasn't dating, I wasn't going out, I wasn't experiencing the city. I didn't feel like a young person in my 20s who had energy, who had like life and excitement within them, because I just felt so burnt out all the time, yet I also felt like I wasn't meeting my potential, if that makes sense. So throughout this period where I was having these feelings, I became friends with Emma, who is my guardian angel and my fairy god sister, if you will. If you don't follow Emma on Instagram, you should. Here is her handle. You definitely need to follow her. She is absolutely amazing. She's the epitome of a creative entrepreneur and definitely a career role model of mine, and just a role model in general. She's a lovely human, a lovely person, and I'm so lucky to be able to call her my friend. So I started becoming friends with Emma during this time, and I expressed to her how unhappy I was at my job and how I felt really constrained and how I wasn't sure that the 9-to-5 like corporate lifestyle was for me. And she basically brought up to me, have you ever thought about freelance social media management? And I confessed to her I would absolutely love that. And again, it was that pattern where I was like, this is something that I've always wanted to do, but I can't bring myself to do it because it feels like I'm straying so far off of my path that I created for myself in like 2015 when I was reading Girl Boss by Sophia Amoruso, and I convinced myself that I needed to dive head first into this hustle culture. Basically, I started reflecting inward and realized that I was living this life that I kind of painted for myself when I was like 18, 19, 20, and I was now nearing like my mid-20s, and I wanted different things. I knew myself better and I had more experience, and I had more experience in a more traditional career path, and I realized that it didn't make me happy. It didn't make me feel fulfilled. I remember coming home for Christmas, coming back here to Montana to my family's home for Christmas, and having to really put on a show of how happy I was at my job to like my friends and family who would ask me about New York and my job, and was I just living the dream and so happy and killing it and thriving. And I was like putting on a whole ass show. It was really exhausting, and I remember like telling Aline, like, I want to do freelance, like 2020 is going to be my year. This was also around the time, it was a little after, but it was around the time when a lot of YouTubers were actually quitting their corporate jobs to work for themselves, and I just remember being so envious and so jealous of what they were doing, and I was bitter, honestly, and just like not a happy person. So basically it was my goal. 2020 will be the year that I finally let myself like make this jump. So when 2020 came around, I slowly started dipping my toe into trying to find clients, trying to network, and connecting with people to pick their brains. January was also a really tough month for me mental health wise, because I went to this really big conference for work in California, and on social media, I'm sure it's just really crazy how different reality is compared to social media, because I had so many people DMing me about this conference that I went to, telling me that I was thriving, that I was a girl boss, that I was living the dream. I was staying at this stunning resort, I was giving these presentations, and yet I felt completely like I had hit rock bottom. One of the nights that I was at this conference, I had the worst anxiety attack and I hadn't had an anxiety attack for like a year. And throughout this time at this conference, when I was feeling this way, I kept asking myself, is this really what you want your life to feel like? Is this really what you want to be doing with your life? Is this really like what you want? You're not happy. And that in turn made me feel more anxious, more depressed, and overwhelmed, because not only did I feel like I couldn't even get off the couch, but now I had to consider like starting from scratch and starting a new career path. And this was all just so heavy, and it was rock bottom, honestly. I also became really sick twice during the month of January because my defenses were so down because of all the stress that I was feeling. Basically, I had to sit with myself and be like, you can't keep doing this. Come March, the pandemic hit, and I had been starting to like dabble with freelance projects and clients, and I wanted to be very, very methodical and careful when making this switch because of my previous experience with job hunting in New York after I was let go at my first job in the city. I didn't want to be too impulsive. I didn't want to make a mistake. I didn't want to not be able to pay my rent again and have to rely on my parents and be in a really stressful financial situation. I knew I couldn't make that mistake again, and so I wanted to be very methodical and careful with the way that I approach this, and knew I'm not going to leave my job until I have something else lined up. Then when March came and the pandemic hit, I came home with my sister to Montana. We thought we'd be here for a few weeks, maybe a month, and it ended up being like, I think it's 9 months at this point. I mean, it's December and we came here in March. Our lease was up, so we were able to move back here, and my mental health started getting so much better. I think a lot of people might attribute it to being in Montana, and I do love Montana. The quality of life is chef's kiss. I love the nature. It's very good. Of course, being with my family is lovely as well, but I think a huge part of it was that I was no longer living this very hustle culture, 9-to-5 grind, which honestly ended up being more like 9 to 7, and then sometimes like 9 to 10. Honestly, this was a time that I fell in love with working from home and having a little bit more autonomy over what my day looked like, and I was really content because I had a job during the pandemic, and I just felt content taking things day by day. I was really able to be very present and mindful in my day-to-day life, and I wasn't thinking like months down the line. I was just thinking about like one day at a time. So grateful to be employed. I took on a lot of new responsibility, was doing a lot of content creation, which I love to do, and I was given a raise, which was amazing and made me feel really appreciated, and morale was definitely higher than it was earlier in the year. So it really had me considering like, maybe I don't want to work freelance. Maybe I'm just more well suited to working from home, which could still be true. Like, who knows? We don't know until we try things. I know some people might be really confused because I think in the last career Q&A I talked about like wanting to stay at my job for like the next few years and really like finding fulfillment in my role and being really happy. And at the time when I was filming that, I truly did mean that. And I was pretty certain that that's where I saw myself going. When I was having doubts, when I was having really prolonged periods of being unhappy at work, when I was having negative incidents at the company that I was working at, I of course like didn't vlog it because I didn't want to get fired. And there's a lot that I don't feel comfortable talking about online, at least not yet, and maybe not ever. I know some people might be confused and some people might think like, oh, but I thought you really loved your job. And when I have expressed that I loved my job, I did in those moments. But once the busy holiday rush started to roll around and the intense pressure to perform started swallowing me back up, it just again came down to having more bad days than good days. And honestly, all the same issues came up where I was being told that I was falling short and that I wasn't performing, and at the same time was being really spread so thin where I felt like I wasn't able to even do the basics of my job to the best of my ability. And I did make an effort to try to communicate the situation with my workload, where basically I was met with the fact that I wasn't time managing properly, which I did take really seriously, and I do welcome critique in the workplace. I don't want this to seem like some sort of defensive thing. I was working myself into the ground. I was working these 10 to 12 hour days and still not accomplishing everything I needed to accomplish. I couldn't sleep. I felt this dread every morning to like sit down at my desk and start the workday. I felt this like impending doom every Sunday before like going to bed to like greet the work week. Every night I like got so anxious thinking about the next day. I know that's normal to a certain point where like work is stressful, but it honestly pushed me to this point where I think something snapped inside me. My mind could not process staying at this job. Like, I would think about even just going to work the next day. There was a fight or flight instinct inside me that would come up, and it felt like it was swallowing me whole, where I was like, I can't even get through the next day, let alone like through the end of the year. Like, I have to do something. There's this really beautiful quote in Untamed by Glennon Doyle that basically talks about something she went through in her life, where it felt like the 10-year-old inside of her like was taking the wheel, saying like, no, that's enough, I'm taking over now. And that's what it felt like for me. It just felt like my childhood self, like my truest self, my most authentic self, was taking control of my body. I know so many people, both online or at my company, might be confused why the timing happened when it did, and like why I didn't just stick it out through the end of the year. Why didn't I just wait until Christmas break? I can't even explain to you that I physically couldn't take it anymore. There's never a good time to have a mental breakdown, but luckily for me, this was a pretty convenient time. Around a month before I made the decision to leave my job, I had talked again with my friend Emma and was basically expressing to her the concerns about these same feelings coming back again, because it wasn't just like a 1 week thing. I would say that it started progressively getting worse in October, maybe like end of September, and there were red flags that were kind of popping up again, where I was worried that I would start feeling as unhappy as I did in January of this year. So I had talked to Emma and basically expressed to her, after a really bad day, it was just like a one-off thing, that maybe I just need to do freelance, which is something I consistently bombarded Emma with throughout this like last year and a half. So basically she connected me with a couple of really great clients, and for that I am just like, I'm eternally grateful, because essentially when I made this decision to talk to my manager after talking to my parents, I already had like 2 clients under my belt with like the potential for more, which honestly was a huge contributing factor to my decision, as well as the fact that I've been living with my family since March. I'm not paying rent, I'm not paying for bills, I'm not really shopping, but I was putting the majority of my paychecks since March directly into my savings, mainly to prepare for the move back to New York. But at the same time, it has allowed me to have this major financial cushion that I would not have had previous to moving back to Montana. So before speaking to my manager, I talked over and over and over and over again with my parents how I'm not gonna be in this position ever again in life, where I'm living from home, rent-free. I have clients lined up and am not paying rent for a really expensive apartment in New York, and if I was to make the jump, it had to be now. So essentially I spoke to my manager. She was very kind and understanding. She brought up some really good points and told me to think about it over the weekend, and I thought about it over the entire weekend, and I could not have been more sure of my decision. Basically the following Monday I put in my 2 weeks notice, and it was really hard. Like, that entire weekend, I think from like a Thursday to a Tuesday, probably had like a panic attack every day. Like, it was hell. And I know I've received so many like nice messages about how I'm so brave and how you find it so like courageous, and what I did was so strong. And that means a lot to me because I was petrified this entire time. This was my first time leaving a professional job, like quitting a professional job, and it was very, very, very difficult. Like, I am such a people pleaser. I hate letting people down. I would gladly put other people's needs before my own. I've also realized how bad I am at advocating for myself throughout this experience of leaving this job, and that's definitely something that I need to work on. And I do think that like I want to eventually go to therapy if I can afford it, because I realized how easy it is for me to just let myself be trampled by others and let my boundaries essentially be just like instantly dissolved by whoever wants to like knock them down. So I have noticed a lot of things that I have issues with. This was one of the most difficult decisions I have ever had to make. And I know a lot of people who leave their 9-to-5 jobs basically say that they like never looked back and they never regretted it and they never gave it a second thought. But for me, as someone who is a chronic overthinker, I have gone over and over and over and over this decision in my head. The list of what ifs that kept popping into my head, you guys, a literal nightmare. What if this is a huge mistake? What if you try freelancing and you hate it? What if you don't get any clients? What if you're just kidding yourself? What if you can't move back to New York? What if you're not financially stable? What if you can't make any money from this? What if this is a huge mistake because of the pandemic? What if you are gonna regret it for the rest of your life? Like, this is what my head looked like during this time. And honestly, sometimes it still does, because this is a major career and lifestyle shift. And so when people have reached out to me in this last week asking like how I got the confidence and the bravery to make this decision, I'm so grateful for the fact that that's the way that they perceive me. But at the same time, this decision was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make, and I was completely debilitated by anxiety for like 2 weeks. And after the anxiety came like a pit of existential dread and depression, and this is something I feel like people don't really talk about, and maybe people just haven't experienced this the way that I did or do. But this is kind of like what happened post leaving the job. I didn't feel this like magical sense of freedom. I didn't feel this like sudden fulfillment and creativity be pumped back into my body. I kind of fell into this massive like pit. I kept going over and over and over in my head, like, what if this was a huge mistake? Like, what if you hate this? What if you're gonna be miserable? What if you will be anxious every day of your life? Like, what if this will be worse than how you felt at your last job and you'll regret it? So I've been working really hard these last few days to kind of quiet those voices in my head and remind myself why I made this decision, and remind myself that no decision is permanent. I can always try freelancing for a few months, and if I really am unhappy, I can always go back to a more traditional 9-to-5 job. As far as wrapping up my position goes, I did everything that I could to leave them in a really good spot. I left content scheduled till January 1st, when my last day was December 1st, and I ended up working a few extra days, which was fine. I was like paid for them, so that was good, just to make sure that I left everything tied up nicely. I created a extensive handover document for the team to be able to reference. After having this time to sit with myself and reflect and rest and kind of regroup, I am going into this week feeling like a lifetime better. I feel like a weight has been lifted off of my shoulders, and it's by no means this like magical experience, and I'm still not gonna sit here and talk about how I'm the happiest I've ever been. I'm just starting out on this journey, but I'm really happy that I made this decision. It was not easy. This was the right decision for me, and this was the right timing for me. People can of course have thoughts and opinions about the things that I do and the decisions that I make, but at the end of the day, I'm the one who has to live with my choices and my actions. Of course, like, actions affect other people. That's not what I'm talking about. But when it comes to making like a career pivot like this and choosing myself over anything else, that ultimately, that affects me. And this is my life that I'm living. It isn't anyone else's. Of course, a lot of people want to know if we're still going back to New York, because obviously now I can work from anywhere. And to that, the response is yes. The plan to go back to New York on January 8th is still on. I'm going to be completely honest, because I know I have received some curious people wondering, like, financially, like, how is this gonna work? We did discuss postponing our move back by like a month or 2 months. Essentially just came down to how many clients will I have by the end of December. And as of now, it looks like I will be making more money my first month of freelancing than I was making monthly at my previous job. The move is on, y'all. Like, but at the same time, I will say that this 100% was something that we've had multiple conversations about with moving back to New York and me making this career change, because I am living at home and this is a really great opportunity to regroup. And if I had to stay longer, I totally would have if I financially was unable to come back to the city. I've saved nearly $20,000 living here, and I'm really proud of that. And I really did work very hard to make sure that I was saving and being really like methodical with my like financial plan and this career decision. I also think that New York is an incredible place to network, and you really do get more opportunity in like this field as far as like digital marketing, content creation, videography, photography stuff, like all that jazz. There really is endless opportunity in New York for that, and the connections I've made from living in New York City alone have been absolutely phenomenal. And I have to say, I could not have done this without the help of my amazing friends who happen to be in my like network, in my professional network. Meg, who I went to school with, and Emily, my good friend, and Emma, of course. I will be forever grateful for them, because they have essentially like put me in the position where I'm able to like follow my dreams, which is, I don't know, I'll never be able to repay them for that. But hopefully once I also like build my career in my network, I can then pay it forward and give back to them. This doesn't end here. I also think it's so important to continuously pay it forward and give when you can, either your time, your help, your connections, and that's something I'm really passionate about, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. And at the same time, I have worked really hard in the last year and a half to make sure that my work speaks for itself, and that I build connections and I like really like show the world what I can do. So that's my story. I'm happy to talk about more details later. Maybe I'll do a freelancing Q&A to update you more, but as of now, I am going to have enough clients to move back to New York, and I'm meeting all the goals that I set for myself financially, and it's fucking terrifying, but I feel like alive again, which is amazing. And yeah, at the end of the day, you really do just have to do what's best for you. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Thank you so much for all the love you've already sent to me. If you follow me on Instagram, that's where I already announced this, so follow me on Instagram if you haven't already. But I'll see you in the next one. Bye.